Storm over Warlock by Andre Norton. Chapter 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. Storm over Warlock by Andre Norton. Chapter 4. Sortie. 5 days later they came up from the south, so that this time Shan's view of the Terran camp was from a different angle. At first sight there had been little change in the general scene. He wondered if the aliens were using the Terran dome shelters themselves. Even in the twilight it was easy to pick out such landmarks as the comm dome with the shaft of a broadcaster spearing from its top and the greater bulk of the supply warehouse. Two of their small flyers down on the landing field. Thorvald materialized from the shadow, his voice a thread of whisper. By Jean's side, the wolverines were moving restlessly. Since Toggy's attack on the Throg, neither beast would venture near any site where they could scent the aliens. This was the nearest point to which the men could urge either animal, which was a disappointment, for the wolverines would have been an excellent addition to the surprise sortie they planned for tonight, halving the danger for the men. Shan ran his fingers across the coarse fur on the animal's shoulders, exerting a light pressure to signal them to wait, but he was not sure of their obedience. The foray was a crazy idea, and Shan wondered again why he had agreed to it. Yet, he had gone along with Thorvald, even suggested a few modifications and additions of his own, such as the contents of the crude leaf sack now resting between his knees. Thorvald flitted away, seeking his own post to the west. John was still waiting for the other's signal when there arose from the camp a sound to chill the flesh of any listener, a wail which could not have come from the throat of any normal living thing, intelligent being, or animal. Undulating in ear-torturing intensity, the cry sank to a faint, ominous echo of itself, to waver up the scale again. The wolverines went mad. Shan had witnessed their quick kills in the wilds, but this stark ferocity of spitting, howling rage was new. They answered that challenge from the camp, streaking out from under his hands. Yet both animals skidded to a stop before they passed the first dome and were lost in the gloom. A spark glowed for an instant to his right. Thorvald was ready to go, so Shan had no time to try and recall the animals. He fumbled for those balls of soaked moss in his leaf bag. The chemical smell from them blotted out that alien mustiness which the wind brought from the campsite. Shan readied the first stopping mess in his sling, snapped his fire sparker at it, and had the ball a whirl for a toss almost in one continuous movement. The moss burst into flame as it curved out and fell. To a witness it might have seemed that the missile materialized out of the air, the effect being better than Shan had hoped. A second ball for the sling, spark, out, down. The first had smashed on the ground near the dome of the comm station, the force of impact flattening it into a round splatter of now fiercely burning material, and his second, carefully aimed, lit 2 feet beyond. Another wail tearing at the nerve. Shan made a third throw, a fourth. He had an audience now. In the light of those pools of fire, the Throgs were scuttling back and forth, their hunched bodies casting weird shadows on the dome walls. They were making efforts to douse the fires, but Shan knew from careful experimentation that once ignited, the stuff he had skimmed from the lip of one of the hot springs would go on burning as long as a fraction of its viscid substance remained unconsumed. Now Thorvald had gone into action. A Throg suddenly halted, struggled frantically, and toppled over into the edge of a fire splotch, legs looped together by the coils of the curious weapon Thorvald had put together on their first night of partnership. 3 round stones of comparable weight had each been fastened at the end of a vine cord, and these cords united at a center point. Thorvald had demonstrated the effectiveness of his creation by bringing down one of the small deer of the grasslands, an animal normally fleet enough to feel safe from both human and animal pursuit. And those weighted ropes now trapped the Throg with the same efficiency. Having shot his last fireball, Shann ran swiftly to take up a new position, downgrade and to the east of the domes. Here he put into action another of the primitive weapons Thorvald had devised, a spear hurled with a throwing stick, giving it double range and twice as forceful penetration power. The spears themselves were hardly more than crudely shaped lengths of wood, their points charred in the fire. Perhaps these missiles would neither kill nor seriously wound, but more than one thudded home in a satisfactory fashion against the curving back carpenter or the softer front parts of a Throg in a manner which certainly shook up and bruised the target. And one of Shann's victims went to the ground, to lie kicking in a way which suggested he had been more than just bruised. Fireballs, spears. Thorvald had moved too, and now down into the somewhat frantic melee of the aroused camp fell a shower of slim weighted reeds, each provided with a clay ball head. The majority of those balls broke on landing as the Terrans had intended, so through the beetle smell of the aliens sped the arid, throat-parching fumes of the hot spring water. Whether those fumes had the same effect upon Throg breathing apparatus as they did upon Terran, the attackers could not tell, but they hoped such a bombardment would add to the general confusion. Shann began to space the whirling of his crude spears with more care, trying to place them with all the precision of aim he could muster. There was a limit to their amount of varied ammunition. Although they had dedicated every waking moment of the past few days to manufacture and testing, luckily the enemy had had none of their energy beams at the domes, and so far they had made no move to lift their flyers for retaliation blast. But the Throgs were pulling themselves in their order. Blaster fire cut the dust. Most of the aliens were now flat on the ground, sending a creeping line of fire into the perimeter of the camp area. A dark form moved between Shann and the nearest patch of burning moss. The Terran raised a spear to the ready before he caught a whiff of the pungent scent emitted by a wolverine hot with battle rage. He whistled coaxingly. With the Throgs eager to blast any moving thing, the animals were in danger if they prowled about the scene. That blunt head moved. Shann caught the glint of eyes in a furred mask. It was either Toggy or his mate. Then a puff of mixed throng and chemical scent from the camp must have reached the wolverine. The animal coughed and fled westward, passing Shann. Had Thorvald had time and opportunity to make his planned raid on the supply dome? Time during such an embroilment was hard to measure, and Shann could not be sure. He began to count aloud, slowly, as they had agreed. When he reached 100, he would begin his retreat. On 200, he was to run for it. His goal, the river a half a mile from the camp. The stream would take the fugitives to the sea, where fjords cut the coastline into a rugged fringe offering a wealth of hiding places. Throgs seldom explored any territory on foot. For them to venture into that maze would be putting themselves at the mercy of the Terrans they hunted, and their flyers could comb the air above such a rocky wilderness without result. Shann reached the count of 100. Twice a blaster bolt singed ground within distance close enough to make him wince, but most of the fire carried well above his head. All of his spears were gone, save for one he had kept, hoping for a last good target. One of the Throgs, who appeared to be directing the fire of the others, was facing Shann's position, and on pure chance that he might knock out that leader, Shann chose him for his victim. The Terran had no illusions concerning his own marksmanship.